Hey folks, how's it going? My name is Jay and you're watching Take 2. So what is Take 2? Take 2 is a revisit to a product that has already been reviewed by SoundStage. This is the 4th episode now, and the first 3 were about products that had already been reviewed on SoundStage hifi.com. This particular product was reviewed by Gordon Brockhouse on June 1st, 2020, and for this one you can read it on soundstagesimplify.com or click on the link below this video to read it. So this is the HEDD or HEDD Type 7 active loudspeakers. Now we won't go into too much of the technical stuff in this video. For that you can read the written review. But the HEDD Type 7 speakers uses air motion transformer tweeter or AMT tweeter for short. Now AMT is a folded diaphragm which has a much larger surface area than a typical tweeter. The benefit of this is that a small movement of a large surface moves air faster and more efficiently than a typical cone design. And this type of tweeter was first made by Dr. Heel over 30 years ago. Now, HEDD took over this design and improved upon it in a few different ways. For example, according to them, they used a more powerful magnet to allow the AMT tweeter to play at higher levels, so output at higher levels with lower distortion. And using this waveguide over here allows the tweeter to cross over at lower frequencies. Now talking about the crossover point, the AMT tweeter is crossed over with this 7.2-inch honeycomb composite woofer with a 1.5-inch voice coil at 2.3 kHz. Now according to HEDD, this honeycomb structure helps with the rigidity and also the breakup of the resonances in the diaphragm. Now what you may not be able to see right off the bat, however, may be perhaps the texture of this speaker. It has this rubbery, silky feeling to it that's quite nice. There's also 2 ports in the front, as you can see, and so this is a front-ported design. In the back, you can see low frequency adjustment for plus minus 4 dB. You also have high frequency adjustment for options for, again, plus minus 4 dB, which is helpful if you find these with too much bass or too much brilliance in your specific room or environments. And then you have the gain adjustment from negative 30 dB to plus 6 dB. This is obviously helpful if you want to get the right volume out of these speakers, but this can also be very helpful if you, let's say, you have more or less volume from one speaker compared to the other because of your sitting spot or room interaction, or maybe your environment is more like a living room or awkwardly shaped room. Then you can adjust the volume accordingly for each speaker so that they play at the same volume in your space. Now to even further enhance your listening experience, there is an app called HEDD Linear Riser. That's supposed to improve the amplitude and the phase response of the HEDD speakers, but we won't get into it in this video in terms of setup process or anything like that. For that, please check the written review. I tried it myself and it was quite of a small difference in terms of sound quality, at least for me. But I can see that some people might find it quite useful, especially for those desktop or computer audiophiles. Here is the source selection, which you can change to unbalanced and use the RCA here. You can change it to balanced and use the auxiliary connection here. Now you may be wondering, what's this head bridge option? But this is more for pro studio use and not for home listeners, so we will not go into this one in this video. As I have said in the beginning of this video, and as you may have already guessed, these are active studio monitors, which means that it has amplification built inside the speakers. Each driver is powered by a 100-watt ICE power Class D amplifier. So this means that you may need a source, a DAC, a preamplifier, but not an amplifier in your system. Now what's funny to me is that I've met more than one audiophile that starts running off when I mention active speakers. But I don't know why. For me, it's a bit of a turnoff for me when I hear about active speakers or power speakers because it has a digital section, the ones that has a digital section. Those are a turn off for me because inside the speaker, there's a digital section that has a DAC, which can become outdated pretty fast compared to other components, and they can potentially limit my ability to upgrade my system down the line. But this speaker has nothing to do with digital. It has no digital inputs, it's all analog. Maybe it's a Class D amplification why so many people run off. But again, the Class D amplification like the ICE module used in this speaker is quite popular and known for their good sonic qualities. And not to mention that these are what's used in the studios to not only mix and master your music, but also to play it back and monitor it. So as audiophiles, when we talk about getting closer to the music, maybe this is the future. I know some of you are already thinking, well, studio setting and stereo listening settings can be very different, inherently very different. So let's talk about how the speaker fares in its natural environment, in a near field and a desktop situation, and then talk about how it fares in a more traditional stereo listening environment. Now for both my near field and stereo listening test, I used my Hegel H190 and the variable pre-out to the head speakers. This works because the Hegel H190 is a all-in-one integrated amplifier, and it has a streamer, DAC, and a preamp built in. The only thing I changed during the testing was the placement of myself and the speakers relative to my sitting spot. So listening in near field or on a desktop setup that I had upstairs, the speaker is fabulous. I may go as far as to say it may be one of the best near field setup I had ever experienced. Listening to albums by Edivo, for example, it sounded not only full and warm in the mid-range, but the bass was impactful, lots of grip and texture, and the high frequency is not forced sounding to me. Although there is plenty of detail and resolution to the sound, I didn't find the speakers forward or airy in the top, especially when compared to other speakers designed with AMT tweeters. But at the same time, I don't find it laid back sounding. If anything, I found the highs to be soft, quite neutral, and well balanced. I kept all the settings at 0 dB, by the way, but you can adjust the amount of highs you get in your space with this speaker, obviously. Now I found the mid-range to be on the warm side of neutral with good body and texture to the sound. Anything from female vocals to male vocals to instruments sounded good without being sharp. The vocals are quite articulate and instruments are easy to decipher with very good tonal balance to them. The lower frequency to me seems to have the perfect amount of bass, but again, you can try to adjust that as well depending on your room. Overall, I find the bass quality is quite great and lots of texture and oomph to the sound, quite impactful. Quite fast as well, but perhaps not as focused as some passive audiophile speakers, like Vocal or even Kef, for example. What's impressive to me is how immersive the sound is in near-field environment. The sound is very dynamic and easy to listen to while having so great detail and separation within the given soundstage. Now, the soundstage may not be as large as if you had, let's say, a passive speakers in a more spacious environment with speakers further apart and you sitting further back. But because you are listening in near field, the imaging and the ability to pick up nuances within the given soundstage is spectacular. Now, in a more traditional audiophile stereo setup, I find the highs, mids, and low frequencies to have the same qualities as I had mentioned with the near field with this speaker. But the imaging is not as quite pinpoint, and it is not as quite full sounding either. The sound staging does stretch and improve, but the ability to pick up the exact nuances before is now taken away. Now, in terms of room placement, I did not find these too particularly room sensitive. I found them quite easy to set up, and I did have them just so ever slightly tilted towards me, but actually, I found them too intimate and too limited in sound staging when I had them tilted towards me more. These are equally good at low and high volumes, and I was impressed by that. It kept all the overall bass quality and the immersive experience in both low and high volumes without losing any composure, which was impressive. Even though these are studio monitors, these are not overly analytical and quite easy to listen to. Especially for a long time listening session. It is even quite good with poor recordings, which also surprised me. So in conclusion, this speaker is seriously a great speaker for those that have limited amount of space but want a great near field or desktop speaker that competes with some of the more traditional passive speakers. This can't be said a lot for passive speakers, by the way. Every time I review a speaker, someone somewhere with a limited amount of space asks me if the speaker can be played in near field or a desktop setup. And my answer is 99% of the time, no, because the brilliance level may be too high or because of the bass response that can become a problem in those situations. This is something you should consider if you are limited for space but want a immersive stereo experience. And like I said, it is perhaps one of the best speakers that I have heard for this type of application. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.